Welcome back to part 2 of season 3, episode 19, where we are doing a beta reading session. So let's jump right into it.
Let's jump in, and we kind of did a little debating beforehand, so we decided to start with mine. So let's see how everybody tore me to shreds first, and then we'll see the reverse. So mine is epic fantasy. It is a second world fantasy. We each wrote a very short introduction to the story. So mine is Nalida's blood moon ceremony is more than a rite of passage, revealing her vampire or werewolf heritage. She and her brothers, triplets ready to expand their parents' reputations, are torn apart as she's revealed as a true monster. To return to her brothers, much less save her family from ruin, she'll have to win the freedom of the monsters like her.
So, first off, when I read your summary, and I mean, I am not a fantasy reader at all. Romantasy sometimes, but I'm not a fantasy reader, and Sarah knows that. And so, literally, my first comment to her was, ooh, intriguing. I was actually quite intrigued by her blurb. And I don't even read blurbs, okay? So, I mean, I feel that that kind of says something. But then secondly, did you hear how she pronounced her main character's name? Because what did Madeleine I say? Nelida.
That's how I said it too, actually.
So, there you go. Fantasy names and how to pronounce it. So yeah, that was quite fun.
I like that pronunciation better, actually. I might adopt
really?
it.
Just because my surname, now, Nelly Darcy, kind of similar. I mean, once I read vampires, my immediate thought was Twilight. And so when you think about Twilight, you think about the relationships vampires and werewolves have. And one of my first comments was, I'm very confused about the relationships between vampires and werewolves. Because I was like, do they like each other? Don't they like each other? Like, I don't know how to feel about this. You know what Sarah said? Yeah, good. That's how you're supposed to feel. I'm like, rude, first of all, but okay. I was like, no.
That is what I said back. I'm like, I'm glad.
Maybe your question is more centered around not necessarily needing to understand the full world's makeup of the divides between vampire and werewolves, but maybe it's like from their family's perspective, or from even just the character's perspective of just like, would she prefer to be one of those?
That's not what I was thinking while I was giving the comment. I was just thinking, because of Twilight, they hate each other. And so I was just like, but they're going to like ceremonies together. So do they stand each other, or like, are they like frat friends? I'm like, I don't understand. Like, are they forced to like each other and be in this synchronization together? So I don't know, like, is fantasy slower when reading it? I'm assuming it's a slow pace.
It's slower
Because
than you would like.
Yeah, because you do all the world
Depends on the
building.
fantasy, but yeah.
Yeah, the beginning can definitely be a lot slower as you're building things out, and there's things you can't put in. Like, I can't go into an exposition about the history of why they like it,
Yeah.
blah, 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 and I'm not even going to do it here. But it's something that I do have to leak out. And I did think, though, from that comment, I was like, you know what? There is a lot of history here, and I'm not really showing much because I'm a discovery writer. So when I wrote this, I had no idea what I was actually writing. So coming back to it, and with that question, now knowing what the rest of the story is planning on doing, I thought, you know, I could put a little hint in here where the werewolves are staying to their side of the yard and the vampires are staying to their side. And the family itself is just trying really hard to keep everybody happy with everybody else. You know, just sprinkle that little detail in what she's seeing the people do.
Yeah. But I also think what I want to say to the person listening to this is, we shared our first 5 pages with each other. You can't know an entire story in your first 5 pages. So when you read someone's first 5 pages, don't expect to know everything, because there are 400 pages left to discover all those things. So I think if you also get into the mindset of, I'm not going to know everything right now, I need to actually finish reading the novel to be able to find all these things, I think the way that you give feedback and the way that you experience the novel is also going to be different and better. So overall, I just had like nitty gritty stuff. So generally we just kind of discuss big picture things that we thought, and then like your commas, like Connor said, or the sentence construction reads weird or something like that, will be changed. Two thoughts that I had was, one, it was interesting that she thought she would be a vampire. I was like, ooh, okay, I want to know more. So that was a good like little red herring that you have. And the other thing that I thought was, so I was a bit, I don't want to say confused, but confused about the qualities of the vampires and the werewolves. Because, you know, your main character's mother is a werewolf and the father is a vampire. But then you have this third mage, I can't remember what it's called.
It's a mage. I did have a typo
Mage.
that said sage, but it's mage.
Yeah. Yeah. So the mage, where you were like, it's both, but it's none. And I'm just like, wait, so does he have like both qualities? I'm like, I don't understand. Like, is this like a vampire that has wings, but it's like hairy? I'm like, I don't, like, can he fly? I'm like, I don't know. And again, it's one of those things like, it's your first 5 pages. But then also I'm like, but can he fly?
That's also one of the questions that I want people kind of asking themselves. So then my response to that is it enough to be intrigued and ready to learn more about the mages as the chapters go on? Or is it a question that's making you stop and go, okay, I can't go farther until this is answered more? Because if it's the first one, I need to fix something. But if it's the second one, there's like, okay, this is a good start. Maybe I'll look at a word or two change, but otherwise wait until the rest of the book.
Yeah, so for me, it was like, I'm confused and I don't want to read anymore.
Okay. All right. Rose and Connor, did either of you kind of feel that way?
I think I'm fine to learn about what makes this mage special compared to everybody else. I think what could be tightened is just maybe more the stuff from your protagonist's point of view, so that we can frame them that way, of like how they feel about this mage, whether because something happens in the end of the pages and you're sort of like my mind was like, is this her finding out she's going to be a mage or something, you know? And if that is where it's going, it would be nice to know beforehand if she, you know, hates them, or loves them, would like to be them, because at one point it seemed like they're not the best thing to be, but then at another point it seemed like they were the best thing to be. So I wasn't quite sure what she thought.
Yeah. They're physically very unhealthy, but they are politically and socially like super respected. So yeah, there is that duality there. What about you, Connor?
I did not have the same problem that Nell did. Maybe it's just because I typically read fantasy, but that was one thing where I read it and I was like, okay, this is a cool like little concept that we can work with, and I expect to learn more about it later. The details of it weren't relevant immediately to what was going on, so I was okay not having all the information.
Okay. So taking all of that in, and for listeners, I don't usually say this in the Beirut, but taking all that in, it tells me that maybe I could fix a few things, but not go too heavy into it. I just need to put maybe a clarifying word or two here or there.
Yep.
And I think I'm going to hear from Rose a lot more. I need to go deeper into the character. Like, I'm going to hear that over and over from her.
That's my obsession.
Thank you, Nell. Thank you so much.
The only one that stuck out to me for some reason that I wanted to mention was the part where you introduce her as a triplet. That phrase there, just because that's worded awkwardly. And then you have this great introduction later where her brother says, yeah, that's why she kicked us out of the womb first. I'm like, that's what we need. Just give us that, and then maybe an internal thought from her, and then you don't have to spell it out for us.
Just the logistics of like, can it still be a twin if there's triplets, and like triplet and twin in the same sentence?
Right after that made me Google it. It's like, is this a thing that,
It's so funny that this is mentioned, because Rose and I actually just had this conversation where I say to her, you know, sometimes people will edit my stuff and they would rephrase it. And I'm like, but you're telling me the exact same thing. I just used it differently. I just said it differently. If I understand the sentence, I tried not to change it because I don't want the writer to lose their voice. And so, like, I read that and I was like, I mean, I understood what you said. That was a choice of words, but okay, that's probably how you say it, and let's move on with life.
Right. Because there is a thing where you could have triplets that all look different, even if they're the same gender. But then you also can have like twins within the triplets where there's two that look exactly alike and then the third one doesn't. And that's what's going on here. So that's what I was trying to get by. But I feel like it tripped everybody up. But I loved Connor's fix here, where I can kind of glaze over it and dive deeper into her feelings of her 18th birthday, like Rose wants me to do at this point, and then let that she has twins who are her triplets come out through the story. I think that would work fine.
Can I just say, I did absolutely not get that. I just thought they were triplets and they all looked the same. Even the twins part didn't even faze me. I was like, triplets? They look the same. Cool.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Connor. And let's do Rose real quick. Any other thoughts?
Right. I just want to preface what my comments just to say, because it's the first 5 pages, I've been reading them maybe differently to like if we were to be swapping chunks over time. So I've been reading it with some of the like knowledge picked up from various courses on like the first 5 pages and what maybe an agent would be looking for to kind of keep reading. My big notes on what can be improved are things like curiosity. So you've done a really great job of like leaving little nuggets everywhere for us to be curious about, like how she seems to be already to eat blood, but she hasn't been turned yet. So as a reader, I'm there like, what? So does this mean that they all drink blood anyway? Are they training? Like there's loads of questions coming up. So that's really great. I think that like sometimes you're giving us a bit too much information and a bit too much exposition early on, and it's sort of, I guess, leaking that tension or curiosity a little bit, because now I'm not curious anymore. You've told me, you know. So maybe just like every time you give us a bit of information, just giving like a little bit more, but not all of it, you know, so then you can keep dropping them, and like each time we learn a bit more.
That one is very interesting to me because Nell was over here giving me all comments of, I don't understand, I need to know more. And what's going on here? I need to know more. And then you and Connor over here were like, maybe you could back off a little here. Maybe you could back off a little there. So I was like, all right. I'm like,
that's
I
funny.
must be right on that line of too much or too little. I had all three of you just in different perspectives of how much information I had put out. But I do see that point though. I could kind of put that into the story better rather than just tell you.
I think in line, I've probably noted a few places where it's like, oh, maybe you can back off of the exposition here. I think what you're saying about us all saying different things is like the thing, isn't it, about beta reading? It's perfect. And then you'll just need to kind of collate that in your mind of like, okay, so who is my ideal reader? So if it is going to be that you're trying to cross over with this one and you're looking for readers who aren't all fantasy, like maybe it's one that you think could cross over into romantasy or something, then you might want more of Nell's kind of feedback because she's probably gonna bring in that kind. But then if you want someone who's like reading fantasy all the time like Connor, and maybe you take on his notes more. So the other point is something that we've vaguely talked about. It was just connection to the protagonist. So we've seen traits that are quite unlikable, which I really like. I love an unlikable character, but I think to get on board with them, we need a little bit more linking to vulnerability and things that she's trying to hide, maybe. Like with her brothers, is she jealous that those two have each other because they're identical and she's like the odd one out? And maybe she's always been the odd one out. If we feel that a little bit more, we can connect to those unlikable things because we know that it's coming from this like vulnerable place, or we just understand what place it's coming from.
I love the moments where you picked it. There were some that I disagreed with you, but you never completely agree with your reader just because I know what's coming later. But the connection, yes, definitely needs to be stronger. That's one of the weaknesses of being a discovery writer or a pantser writer, is that I am discovering all this information as I'm writing it. And so a lot of times I end up missing some of the emotion or missing some of the things because I'm world building as I'm writing. It's good to see that and to have some of the ideas, because sometimes it's good just to get the ideas sparked. And I think that's what's happened with Rose's suggestions there.
Yeah, and I'll always comment probably more times than you would have to do it, because obviously I'm just seeing all the places where you could add, and then you can just choose which ones you want to add in, and that it will probably be enough, you know. And it's also a taste thing. The only other thing I had that's probably worth going into on this is to do with tension. So for the first 5 pages, I think that's something that will really get the reader turning on to the next 5 pages. And so things do happen to disrupt. So like the brothers come in and they disrupt her a little bit. The way that I've been taught the tension thing is that you have these little disruptions and then it's good to have some kind of conflict, and that could be like internal or external.
I feel like the tension is missing because the character connection isn't where it should be. And so I feel like as I fix that character connection, that tension is going to be fine. I'm trying to keep it in a lighter personal tension. What does she want and why is she struggling with it? And if I do that, then it's going to lead into that
if
bigger
you
tension
start off
at the end.
and she wants something, and then by the end of those pages her expectations has changed, that's basically all we kind of want as a reader, is to know that something has shifted. And to do that, you need to know where it was to begin with. So yeah, it's probably a connection.
Right.
Adjacent. But other than that, like,
Exactly.
I love the setup. I like the premise. Same with Nell. Like when I read the little summary, I was like, ooh, I want to read about this. And I love the triplet thing. There's like a great kind of creep factor that you can bring in. And there were some great moments where you showed personality through descriptions and things like that. So just more of those, and more of the, I love the blood juice and the world building. All good.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Alrighty, Connor.
Mine is called The 13th God. It's a dark fantasy novel about 3 characters in a low magic Viking-inspired world. Sif the Maiden, Oscar the Druid, and Njord the High Jarl. When an unexpected astronomical anomaly occurs on the night of Hostafest, it throws their culture into chaos and sets the 3 on intertwining journeys that reveal divine secrets kept for centuries. I also am a discovery writer, and this is brand new. I wrote it for this. So like in the week before we submitted, that's how new this is. That's why I think I also have some of the same struggles, like with getting into the character's head and stuff, because I'm figuring this out as I'm doing it. So anyway, yeah, we can get started ripping it apart.
Yeah, first off, as I read your introduction, I was like, there are several words I cannot pronounce. That was super fun. So, hello English. And then I had to Google. I was like, what does these words mean? I mean, I think I know what it means, but anyways. So, first of all, it was actually, for a fantasy, it was an easy read. I was like, whoa, I actually understood everything that you were saying, except Druids. It's a word that's very similar in Afrikaans. So I was like, what? I was like, that sounds weird. But I mean, I kind of understood as I continued reading what it meant. But yeah, it was a very easy read. I was thoroughly surprised. I was like, whoa, I might actually be able to read a fantasy. What? And it's a dark fantasy? How did this come about? So just a few little things. The one confusion that I had, which you did clear up, is about the reddish fire moon, because in one breath you said the reddish fire moon comes every 3.5 years, and then in the next breath you were like, yeah, but it won't be seen for centuries. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, you just said 3.5 years. Where did the centuries come from? I was like, what is happening right now? So, and I think that is also what I like about beta reading, is like the finer little details that you either kind of just forget, or once you do the editing, you kind of just skip some of those things. So it's then nice for a beta reader to kind of point those little things out. Then the other thing that kind of confused me was that Sif, who at the moment is your main character. In the first chapter, we learned about Sif. And so the one thing that kind of also confused me a little bit was she was talking about the infidelity of her father. And my first thought was, because she was like, yes, nobody wants to be with me because of my father's infidelity. And then people look at me because they think I'll be cheating. And immediately my thought was like, okay, but isn't the saying usually like father like son, not like father like daughter? I was like, I don't understand why she would be seen as also falling into the infidelity river as her father. And so I've thought a little bit of clarity about that might be nice, because I was just a tad confused about that. But other than that, I was just like pretty chilled with this one. I was like, okay, cool. Like, we're vibing with these pages.
Well, good. The infidelity thing, I think, was a case of author knowledge failing to transfer onto the page, because it's specifically because she's a product of the infidelity that is the connection, not that just her father was cheating, but that she is the product of said cheating.
Okay, that makes more sense now.
But yeah, I just need to, I think Rose had some trouble with that too. So yeah, that just needs to come through more clearly.
I think I got that, like, her father had been the one cheating. I know that you replied to a comment, and I specifically didn't reply because I was going to talk about it on here.
Well, perfect. What a segue.
But it was to do with the mum. I think you thought I was confused whether her mum was her mum. And it was more that she kind of thinks something quite like almost aggressive towards that mother figure. And I guess it was a connection thing again, where it's like you maybe need a little bit more framing. She's not
Oh,
my
this
mother.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just that it stuck out. So when I say name splaining, it's just like, when you say a name and then you say exactly like who they are to this character immediately. And sometimes you can sort of sprinkle it in a way that feels more natural. So it's something to look at. But also like you could hint towards resentment toward the mother figure, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I thought she was her definite mum. But it's like if we hint towards resentment in some way, maybe that it's her dad's new squeeze or whatever, he's at it again, and so I don't care, she's not my mother. We're in a misogynistic world, and so feminist hack going on, we give men and male characters more leeway with kind of unlikable thoughts. And so when a woman is there going, I don't feel guilty for this thought, like I think there's like a natural reaction to be a bit like, all right, she's a bit if we don't know why, we're going to be a bit harsher on her than maybe a male character, where we'll just be like, oh, interesting. So if we have like not the whole thing, but like a little framing of like, this is the new wife, and so we get a little insight into maybe this is why she doesn't feel guilty anymore, because it's part of this whole other thing, then we can kind of get on board with the character easier.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't have to get into that explanation right now, but that's, good to know.
Okay, so what I thought was working, especially since you've told us this is so brand new, you're getting across a lot of lore and world building in a really concise and easy to read way. So good job. And there's a lot of curiosity seeds like dropped everywhere that aren't confusing, they're just interesting, like the marriage stuff. I know that I had a magic question mark over her the music thing, but it's not necessarily that I was sure it's magic. It's that it's a curiosity thing that I've got because of the way it was described. I wonder if this is magic, because she seems to not be able to see any, but like she was like, I can't see when I do this music thing. So I'm like, is this because of magic? Because it's fantasy, like I'm reading it with that lens of like anything is possible. So obviously, like if you really hate that that's the way I'm thinking, then that's something you can change.
I mean, that's very interesting though, because I didn't thought of that at all. Oh, she can just play the flute, and because she's concentrating on her notes, like she can't look at her friend in the crowd.
I think it's because you'd mentioned like druids. Druids is a very Welsh thing, and I'm Welsh, so I know about them, and there's like usually magic surrounding that situation. So I was probably like reading it with that lens, like there could be some anywhere.
That's very cool. I've never even thought of magic. I was just like, dragons?
There's always potential for magic. I loved the druids. I loved that depiction. Connection is the thing, and we've talked about it before, so you'll know what I'm talking about. Just missing little chances to get her knowing better, and you can frame the way you describe the world more through her eyes, and then that's like a little hack. And just maybe a few disruptions, because I don't know what she's expecting for the night at the beginning versus the end of the pages, just to keep the tension there. But yeah, I think you've done a good job. If there's anything I said in the comments that you wanted to talk about on here, then let me know.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think we're good to move on to Sarah.
Hi, Connor.
Hello. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Okay, so I only have like two things I really want to talk about. And the first one, we both talked about it in the comments, so I'm not going to go deep into it, but there is some confusion for me of what time of day it is and what to expect for them, where they're going to, because you start out saying the full moon's in the sky. And I don't think they caught it either, but this is something that I learned writing. Actually, the story you guys read is the full moon cannot be in the sky unless it is dusk, and it will be up all night and then set at the morning. So if the moon is in the sky, to me, it's dark and not the middle of the day. Cannot be the middle of the day. And so we talked about that, and some of the movement then threw me off as we went, because I was imagining, oh, it's after dinner, they're having their night party, and now the night party's over, we're all going into town to bed, not going into town to prepare dinner. And so that all was a problem in my mind, because I couldn't figure out the movement until I realized that you'd made a mistake, and there's going to be need to be a shift there in the moon cycles and the time of day.
Can I just say, side note though, because this is fantasy and you are building your own world, the moon can be up when it's daylight, can't it?
If there's a magic that's going to explain it.
Well, surely if it's just a random world that doesn't live by our metric.
Yeah, because I was just like, it's fantasy. I will believe anything.
Yeah, in which case the moon is going to have to be explained to me as a magical sort of thing or something. Otherwise, laws of physics exist. If you're going to break it that dramatically, that is the middle of the day and the moon is full in the sky, then you're going to have to also give me a feeling that there's some sort of magic at play. There's some sort of strangeness in the sky. It's not a pretty blue sky that looks just like my world. So that I can then push that believe button and say, okay, I'd love to learn more about why this moon can be doing that and what's going on with the magic and what's going on with all of this. Otherwise, I'm going to believe it's more like my world.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yep, didn't know that about the moons. So another reason beta readers are important is fact checking you.
Right.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing about fantasy. I think sometimes people think that, oh, it's fantasy, I can make it do whatever I want. Yes, if it makes sense. You have to make it make sense, or the reader cannot push believe and will not get pulled into your story. But the other one I wanted to talk about is you're saying this is a dark fantasy, and 5 pages in, I'm not getting dark fantasy vibes. I'm not getting horror vibes. I'm not getting any kind of grit vibes. This feels more like a normal epic fantasy to me at this point. I don't know if the rest of the chapter gets into more of the dark fantasy horror vibes or if there's something in the characters I'm missing. It was well written for what it is, but I was wondering where the dark fantasy vibes are coming in all of it.
So this is something I actually wanted to discuss, and that's that I have tried to start this a couple of times, and Sif's character changed dramatically for this particular draft. Originally, she was very, like, almost the complete opposite of what you see here, where she was reserved, like, the flute was a thing I just made up for this. Very angry, feels very little happiness. I actually did want to ask if you think that would be a better direction to take her character instead of being part of the party. If she sulks in the back or finds something else to do, finds other excuses to not be there. Discovery writer, and I'm figuring this out as I write it.
I think that depends more on how you want her character to struggle through the book. Is she outgoing but have these things on her mind, like her father and stuff, or is she more of a goth sort of a thing? Definitely adding her more goth girl feeling into her would put in more of the dark fantasy. Maybe some notes with the druid. Like, I'd really love if we leaned more into the druid, because I feel like that's where your dark fantasy is kind of coming in, is what's going on with what the druids think is happening right now. It's not just a celebration. And maybe just in the atmosphere, sprinkling in some of the atmospheric tensions. Like, it's just another day, but something just feels funny on my soul. But like, you do have the air kind of feel a little funny, but if you leaned into it and really gave me a reason why this guy feels like he's got to protect them from this evil druid or this weird druid or whatever you want that vibe to be.
Mm-hmm.
You start with a line and you're quite zoomed out. It's like a narrator, and it's talking about what basically Sif and her people are missing. I wonder if maybe you can use that narrator a little bit more, so as you go on to describe her having this fun time, you could bring it back in a little bit and be like, but in the background these shadows are creeping over, like little moments like that, where the reader can know something that even the character doesn't know.
Yeah. I also kind of thought when I read dark fantasy, I was like, ooh, because I was like, okay, dark fantasy, dark romance. So I was like, okay, I get the gist of it. Like depth, like no kind of topic is off limits type of vibes. And as I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is nothing like serious. I was like, this is very light, actually. And so I think, as Sarah said, I think you don't necessarily have to change her personality. You just have to change her circumstances. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, thank you, everybody.
We like to keep things short here on Tea and Tales. Thank you for joining us for part 2 of episode 19. You can jump right into part 3 right now, or save it for later and get your fingers back on the keyboard and your pens back on paper.
If you love what we are doing here, if you have enjoyed our first part of our baiting reading session, go follow us on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at Gentiles Podcasts, and on Twitter/X and TikTok at Podcast Details. Go to that purple icon on your device. Tell us how much you are loving our beta reading sessions and help us go up, up, up. It's a moment.
Happy writing, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.